a lot of drop-offs happen after visit 3 is people get their first EOB and they go, wow, I didn't know I owed this much. And then what do? They call your office because you took ownership of it completely without any qualifiers, and they yell at you, and rightfully so. So that's the issue, Paul.
Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Strata PT. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. Recently, Strata PT was ranked the #1 EMR and billing system in outpatient therapy and rehab from Class Research. On today's episode, Paul Singh, the CEO of Strata PT, sits down with Jerry Durham, the CEO of the Client Experience Company, to understand the challenges of benefit verification and how to protect your clinic from common issues. Together, the guys discuss why most clinics don't need better tech, they need a better checklist, how fixing front desk scripts solved an 8-month billing problem overnight, why benefit verification must be handled by a dedicated person, not an online lookup, and lastly, why legacy healthcare brands undervalue PTs and how poor workflow clarity feeds that perception. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
So here's the thing. The problem with benefit verification in general, I don't know what the right term is, benefit verification.
And yeah, I think that, but put it that way, that's what term we have to use. That's the term everybody will understand.
Here's the problem with it. It's not really a technical problem. I mean, it
You are
is, but it
correct.
isn't. And
You
so
are.
the
You're
issue here is
130% correct. You're
right.
130% correct.
And so when we think about it, it's like, it's probably one of the most important steps that any clinician or any practice has to think about, because you got to make sure you're going to get paid on this. On the other hand, when I think about, and there's probably lawyers that can say this better than me, but I'll just talk like a second grader. Here's the thing: Medicare and sort of those federal agencies, they have a much stricter mandate on what their APIs can and can't do. So if you electronically verify against Medicare, you can pretty much count on that answer being 100% accurate.
100%. Yeah, that's where I was going to go with this, right? Is there
Right.
certain things, and this is what you learn, right?
And then you think about all the other, private payers in the country, they're not really held to that same standard. And so, if you ask them if they offer electronic verifications or whatever, they're absolutely going to say yes, but you're not asking the right question. The question is, does what you send back electronically hold weight? And the answer is no.
That is the issue. That is the issue, Paul. That's 2000% the issue. We
Right.
talk
I mean, we
about
used to try to do this electronically, and then we killed it. I mean, I'm pretty sure the code still exists on our end. We just don't do it. Instead, we're like, hey, go talk to Jerry and his guys, or, do it, have your front desk do it. Because ultimately, if you want to be bulletproof, you got to like talk to a human. Now, certainly, I think AI and some of the things that we're doing and other people are doing is going to be cool in the future. But yeah, the state of benefit verification today, mid 2025, is not great. It's not much better than it was, I would argue, even 10 years ago.
well, even more than when I was doing it 15, 18 years ago, Paul. And this is where this journey started. You hit a lot of points there. First off, I want everybody to sit down and think about it. Call your insurance provider today. I want everybody listening to this, take their insurance card, put this on pause, dial the 1-800 number, and listen to the first words that comes out of the person's mouth who answers the phone. That's the biggest tell. And nobody will acknowledge what that is said. And then what I've found over time, Paul, is everybody takes ownership of then this information, which you were told at the beginning of the call. I don't even want to tell people what they say, but we might as well say it. This call is no guarantee of benefits. And then your team goes out, not you, I mean, generally speaking, your team goes out and gets that. And we tell people, oh, we got your benefits. Here they are, right? And you write them down, and you write them you write them like you got them, which you don't understand. The patient doesn't understand. You take complete ownership of this. And then when the bill is, when you get the ELB after visit 3, there's probably another big reason a lot of drop-offs happen after visit 3 is people get their first EOB and they go, wow, I didn't know I owed this much. And then what do? They call your office because you took ownership of it completely without any qualifiers, and they yell
Right.
at you, and
Right.
rightfully so. So that's the issue, Paul. That is
Yeah.
flat out the issue.
Yeah. What do you think, and if you wanna take a pass on this, you can, but what do you
Oh, are you
think
kidding me?
it's gonna look like 2 or 3 years from now?
Yeah. Here's what I think. I mean, and so we have to go into this knowing that the information that is given to us has a we talk about risk reduction. So, like everything else, Paul, this is risk. You're managing risk when you take on ownership. This is the other interesting thing. We owe. There's nothing on the face of the earth that says we owe anybody their fucking insurance information. And so we just need to step back. And by the way, it's an important step and you must do it. But I do it as a value add. I do it as a, hey, Paul, this is what we'll do for you. Hey, Paul, my team works very hard to do this, right? So to me, it's more how you script it and put it in the experience because you want to get paid, by the way, regardless of if the insurance pays you or not. Because we can talk about the collection stories I have going on the back end where I collected money from people because my financial policy said if there's a mistake, by the way, I wrote it in like 13-point font. The rest of the financial policy was in 11. And it said, here's your information. And literally right below it, it said, if this information is incorrect, it is your insurance company's fault, period. If it is incorrect and you would like our help dealing with your insurance company, please contact us directly. They had to, Paul, they had to initial and sign that line that said, if it's wrong. Guess what? All my billing problems disappeared with that line. Now, mind you, we would get the benefits. I would promise to get your benefits. When we did the cost callback, we didn't say these benefits aren't, this is no guarantee. We said it in English. This is the information you're interested. My cost callback with the insurance information read exactly like the financial policy. When we did that, Paul, all of our billing problems disappear. So where do I see this going? If people would just change a conversation and I would get people engaged on the backside to get pissed off at their insurance. There was no better agreement, no better way to get what I needed than to call Paul and go, Paul, I'm so sorry we got to this. As you know, because the first thing I always checked before I called you was, did you sign the financial policy? I said, Paul, as we told you, the insurance company was going to, it's so unfortunate, Paul, they screwed you too. And by the way, Paul, the alignment on that, I got paid. Everybody I talked to paid me. Now, not everybody called me back. Everybody I talked to paid me because I got them to understand this is the process we put you in. We told you this. We told you we could help you. Ultimately, you're financially responsible. And so solving the billing problem was not a you know suing UHC. It wasn't anything other than taking that current process that, oh, by the way, we have no control over. Take control of what we can. And so where do I see this going? Is I see what we do is we call every insurance. Now, right, it's a heavy lift on the front end, but my team is awesome at then gathering every time they call Blue Cross of West Hollywood, they're gathering the data so that we're building our own database to go, okay, by the way, to help our clients better understand that typically when we call Blue Cross of West Hollywood, 80% of the time, this is how things line up, right? So where do I see it going? I see it going deeper that side than actually getting, we'll never get the correct information, Paul. So where do I see it going is that a better way to store and gather information with the insurances you do well with. So again, that you can manage your business, risk mitigation, right? Have better conversations with patients. By the way, tell the patient that 80% of the time when we call Blue Cross and give us incorrect information, this is what we have. This is, by the way, this is what we can agree to or whatever you want. So I believe the future is better management of the data that comes out so that we can just have better conversations with
Yeah.
people.
I think this, yeah, I don't disagree with you, by the way, and I think we're all kind of guessing here, but I think that I think I'll start by saying that this problem is unfortunately kind of unique to healthcare. Like when I go into Starbucks to buy a cup of coffee, there's no expectation that I can walk out of that place with a cup of coffee if my American Express doesn't go through, right? It's just a fact, and you can point at almost any other consumer business. There's a clear understanding between the business and the customer that you're using a credit card. We love that. It's fast, it's efficient, but you can't just walk out of here if your card, isn't processing. Like all sales stop, if the point of service is down or something like that. So it's uniquely healthcare, and I think that sort of tracks with what you're saying. Part one is make sure it's really clear on your intake forms or your paperwork and your signage or whatever that where the expectations are and that sort of thing. I think on the other side of it, I think what we're going to see is technology kind of obviously everybody, the scary thing about technology is people always think it's going to get rid of people. So I think aside from that, I think, when people worry about technology, they think it's going to drastically change everything. I think what it's gonna look like over the next year is that it's gonna be a little bit more efficient, but I don't think you're gonna have AI, agents calling on behalf of the verification. I actually think it's gonna start a lot simpler than that. There's gonna be a button. I'll just speak about it in terms of what I think is gonna happen on our roadmap, for example, just as one example. I think that we're gonna have to figure out a way to capture that recording, whoever's making the call. It's almost like we got to capture that recording and bring it into the system, because this whole he said she said thing goes away really really quickly when you can point to a recording and you know
Well, and we do that. And here we go again, Paul, right? So we record all our calls. We document everything they have, right? They give their ID number, date and time, and everything. So when our clients come back to us, they will, no matter how much I have this conversation, your team gave us the wrong information. I go, here it all is. We've had this conversation. Here's who they talk to. Here's the recording. Here's everything. You go for it. That's it. You either use me or you don't. You use me with the context of we have put everything into place, right? To your point, right? So record the call, right? And by the way, with AI, to be honest, I think the biggest value is an AI type platform that will, just like listening to, I got people, right, recording phone calls for my clients right now, is pull out that info, then that we can auto populate that spreadsheet so we know what all the plans. The other interesting thing, Paul, you just brought up real quick with the recording, which I didn't mention. I learned this during my journey when I was answering all the phone calls in my business, and I was sitting in the same room as my benefit checks team. And I would hear her do a call to Blue Cross, and then I'd hear her do a call to UHC. Well, I was getting a sheet back with the same boxes checked and same information. And I was like, wait a minute, why'd that call sound so different? And she would go through me that if you asked UHC, and I'm making this who, but the point is, if you ask UHC about a deductible in the same way you asked Blue Cross, you wouldn't get the right answer. So she also had to figure out the right wording and the right structure to ask the questions to get the right answer. I'm like, dude, it was
yeah yeah
cuckoo.
yeah. I mean yeah, it is wild. Sometimes I have to remind myself that sometimes I feel insane just thinking about this stuff, because some of this behavior would not be accepted in any way in any other industry. And then you sort of realize oh, okay, I'm not making this up. I'm not crazy. This is insane to me.
So this is why I don't think, as we sit here, May of 2025, as I'm building out AI voice agents for front end sales, I really don't think that the AI side and the tech side of benefit checks is going to do anything in the near future, Paul. I don't think it's going to change in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years because of who controls the information, plain and simple, right? And this is what I keep trying to get across to people is the info, right? That's all external. So this is when you and I talked about this before, and I just saw a clip again, Paul, right? We love to focus on the external things we don't have control over, by the way, payment. But benefit checks, right? We get pissed off because insurance company, I got a client goes, you got to call them back. I'm like, no, we won't call them back. We get the information, and then you and your team, because I don't have their front end sales, has to have an honest conversation. I give all my benefit check clients, I give them the financial policy. I give them the structure around the phone call to do the cost callback because I keep telling them it's not the benefit check. It's the way you handle the information, the sharing of information so that you don't have to take ownership of the information. That was my billing problems disappeared, Paul, literally disappeared. And billing problems, I mean, with my customers, not denials and shit like that. My billing problems disappeared when we did this. We didn't, that's always funny. I go, did we start getting correct information? No, no. But I told Paul I managed and set expectations and then made sure that the conversation you had on the first phone call and the verbiage and the conversation you got on the benefits callback and the conversation that then, what's interesting? I did the benefit callbacks. It was my accountability to auto populate the financial sheet because I said, why are we going to pass this off to someone else? I just did the cost callback. So I know the conversation. I didn't want my benefits team to fill that out because they didn't talk to the client. They didn't hear the nuance of the conversation. So I don't think AI is going to impact our side of it, this benefit check thing. I don't think it's going to impact it at all, Paul. Like you said, you were going down that path. But it can gather information, it can do recordings. I believe it can autofill a spreadsheet quicker, and we can, as business people, make better business decisions with the AI information we
Yep,
get back,
yep,
right?
yep. What do you think? So like I'm 100% on board with you, right? So all right, so let's pretend. Look, for better or for worse, you and I see the world largely the same way, right? And anybody that's listened to this show, YouTube, podcast, whatever, wherever they're watching it from, they all kind of know we generally see the world the same way. So let's flip it over to the other side of the coin. You and I are in relatively fortunate positions where, like for example, I can influence our product roadmap and I can tell you where we're going over the next 3, 6, and 12 months in terms of technology and all that. But on the other side of this is a practice owner with 10, 20, 30 clinicians listening to this, and they've got to face the reality that, they got to get these authorizations. They got to do. So obviously the easy answer is work with Paul, work with Jerry, whatever. Right. But before we even get there, like, what do you think they ought to be doing? Is it like, hey, you got to assign like, what's the operational thing somebody has to do right
Yeah.
now to kind of get their house in order? It's not supposed to be a veiled pitch for you and me or whatever. It's like,
No, 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 because they can do this. And I've been sharing this a lot on LinkedIn with building out the AI voice agent with the client. So I connected with an AI platform doing pre-arrival work, and they're doing all kinds of stuff, including benefit checks. I go to my client who I'm working with, and what I found the value that, and I'm sharing this with others because you can do this without me, but you got to hear me in this story, is the value is the workflow. And I realized workflow is just another word for understanding your client patient's journey in your business and every touch point. And we just filled out a lucid chart of every single touch point that someone in his business can go through, to get to that arrival. They can come through the website, they can come through a phone call, right? All this stuff. And we built out the workflow of what needs to happen. And what needs to happen, the conversation and the setting and managing of expectations so that then things could be executed on. So what everybody should do, Paul, and I go to my, right, whether they're working with my benefits company or they're working with my other company and I'm helping with the workflows, is I'm making them map out and they have to tell me, where do you want to manage the cost conversation? And they have to tell me where they want to manage the cost conversation. As soon as they understand that journey, Paul, they can do it themselves. Anybody can do this stuff themselves because everybody's out there doing it. So yes, and then you're going to need a dedicated person, by the way, to call, not look online, insurance companies. And then you're going to need a system for getting the information to the right person, on your team. You need, so I've been preaching, and what I learned early on in my journey, when I started talking to other business people, is the better I understood my client, customer, patient's journey within my business, and then the touch points they were going through, that the better I could manage and create the experience that I want to create for them. And that's it. And that's it. Right? Charles Schwab does it. In-N-Out Burger does it. Amazon does it. Everybody does it. Every successful business, Disney does it. So what I found now, here we are with AI and all this conversation, right? And all this conversation around AI. And now I'm starting to talk to people who are building AI platforms. And guess what they need? And guess where the biggest expense is building out the workflow, AKA your patient's journey within your business. So back that up. You don't have to employ me. You don't have to employ AI. But this is 130,000% of the problem with everybody I deal with. They can't tell you any steps, Paul, before that person. All they can tell you about is what happens in the about. And I will go to my grave with this and write, and I put out that patient success manifesto, and it's all about engaging people earlier and leveraging that pre-arrival process. That moment you write marketing, we have, right? People see your billboard. So fucking what do they do? We come into the game once they take action and say, hey, Paul, I have a question. Hey, Paul, I'd like to do business with you. We must understand everything that's going to happen from that moment forward, right? Control the phone call, make the promise, deliver the deliverables, get the benefit check, do the cost callback, have a cost sheet, document this, right? Have a financial policy that will align with all this, right? This took me a long time to figure out, but once we did, right? Everything disappeared. So have a dedicated benefit checks person, have a dedicated front end salesperson, have a flow of information. This was the one time I really got to leverage my EMR for good, right? I found out where, because I was sitting in a room taking the call. Paul would tell me his insurance information. I had a conversation, told him what we could do, was happy to do all this for him. I had an awesome team. And as soon as we hung up, I would test the benefit check through my EMR. They would put what I called a cost callback sheet into the patient's folder. All our cost callbacks were done on the same schedule. They were related to a validate. So all we had to do was pin a validate. I would go in 48 hours before. So on Monday evening, I'd pull up all the Tuesday callbacks. I would review them and prep and be ready and call Paul. Hey, Paul, this is Jerry. Just as promised, I have your costs and your insurance benefits. Today is now a good time. You go, yeah. And I would go down the cost call sheet and and then when you said yes, right, it was my job to create the financial policy that my front desk team then would hand over to Paul. And we had that scripted out. Hey, Paul, this is the financial policy. This is all the information you got from Jerry. If anything is not the same as what he told you, please let me know now. So again, the success in this, Paul, had zero to do with the information we were getting. Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think what you're saying is
Yeah, it's all in the
all in the
workflow,
clarity of the
managing and
process.
setting expectations. Every
Yeah.
great business
Yeah.
does this, right?
I think that's the thing that I think is worth highlighting there, by the way, for anybody that's in the thick of things right now, is that you probably don't need better technology. You probably don't need a better tool. There's probably a lot of things you can do to feel like you're tackling this problem. But for somebody watching this or listening to this right now, when you're in the thick of it, it really just comes down to like just own the process. And that doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, you know, a Gantt chart on some Microsoft product. It's probably literally a
It literally is a
checklist on a
checklist,
Google
Paul. That's
Doc.
all it was, right? And
Uh,
making sure the team was connected on that
right,
checklist,
right.
right?
And that's
You know what else I want to throw out there real quick? I'm going to throw this out real quick. We threw a bunch of tech and money off the back end when we were having all these billing problems, and we tried to fix our billing problem in the billing department. And we spent 8 months, right? Invested time, money, and energy on that, and nothing changed. Coincidentally, I'm not going to take much credit for this. Well, I get credit for starting it for another reason. Coincidentally, we had changed the front desk script. And on that intake script, I started sharing with Paul all this stuff we're talking about, that we'll check your benefit check. Remember that we can do ABC. Hey, we'll do this. Our billing problem for 8 months of that work stayed the same. Within 3 months, our billing problem fucking disappeared. Gone by changing the script, not the tech.
yeah. It's interesting. Like that, I think that's probably that should be the biggest takeaway for people, is that something where you got to go spend 3 weeks looking for the right tool and then vet it and all that. You can fix this today in your practice. Um, and so I know like we've
It makes your tech more valuable, Paul, if you do
eh,
this.
yeah, well, that's true. Well, yeah,
Right. If you understand this process, then the tech you pull in will be far more valuable and the ROI will be way bigger, Paul.
I would say, I mean, I couldn't disagree with you at all on that. I think the thing I would just say here is that I think this is like you've met a lot of business owners. I meet a lot of them too every day, right? And I think the end of the day, the trickiest part is a lot of these people have bought into the marketing of the entire industry. You need this tool or else you're screwed. You need that or whatever. And I think the reality is that you don't really. I mean, I think our best customers are not the ones that depend on us. They're the ones that see the world the same way we do. Like you got to put the authorization in there, and then you got to use technology to pound on the payers. So all I'm saying though, Jerry, is that I think you're right, and I think that anybody listening to this really just needs to focus on the process. If you just start there, that's something you can change in an hour after listening to something like
Yeah,
this.
right. And that's the other thing, Paul. You don't have to go out and buy it and change it and do all this other stuff.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing services work, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.